1587, the dawn of a new world. As English ships cut through the misty Atlantic, more than 100 settlers stare across the waves toward their future, a wild, uncharted land that promised freedom, fortune, and a fresh beginning. They were led by Governor John White, tasked with founding England's first permanent colony in the Americas, on a small island off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Roanoke Island. Among the settlers were men, women, and children, including White's own daughter, Eleanor Dare, who soon gave birth to Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World. But the land was harsh, the weather unpredictable, and the relationship with native tribes fragile. When supplies ran low, John White sailed back to England, promising to return quickly with aid. He had no idea it would be the last time he would ever see his colony alive. Back in England, war erupted with Spain. The Armada threatened invasion, and every ship was seized for battle. White pleaded for passage back to his people, his daughter, his granddaughter, but years passed before he was allowed to sail again. Finally, in 1590, after 3 long years, his ship reached Roanoke Island. What he found was silence. The settlement was deserted, houses dismantled, fortifications torn down. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Only the word Croatoan carved into a wooden post. On a nearby tree, a single letter, C, roughly cut into the bark. To White, it was both a clue and a heartbreak. The word Croatoan referred to a nearby island, home to a friendly tribe he once knew. But storms forced him to turn back before he could investigate. He never returned. And from that moment, the fate of the lost colony of Roanoke became one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. What happened to those 117 men, women, and children? Did they move to Croatoan Island and assimilate with the local tribes? Were they attacked by hostile forces or swept away by disease and starvation? Or did something far stranger happen? Something that erased them completely from the map of history? Centuries later, archaeologists still search the coastline. Buried artifacts, English pottery, tools, fragments of armor hint that survivors may have lived among native tribes. DNA studies have even found faint traces of European ancestry and modern descendants of the Croatan people. But no definitive evidence has ever surfaced. The colony simply vanished, not destroyed, not conquered, not erased by time, but gone. Some say they moved inland, following the rivers toward safety. Others whisper of darker possibilities, that famine, fear, or superstition drove them to madness. The island remains quiet, covered in pines and sea fog. Tourists visit, walking through foundations that lead nowhere. When night falls, the waves lap against the shore where the settlers once stood. Some locals swear they've seen lights flicker in the trees, faint lanterns moving through the darkness. Maybe echoes, maybe memory. Or maybe Roanoke is still trying to speak. The sea keeps its secrets. The forest keeps its silence. And the lost colony of Roanoke keeps its ghosts.
March 31st, 1922, rural Bavaria. The village of Kaifeck lies silent under a heavy blanket of mist. At the edge of the forest, a lonely farmhouse stands. 6 people inside, unaware that this night will be their last. The family Gruber were known to their neighbors. Andreas and Cecilia Gruber, their daughter Victoria Gabriel, her 2 children Cecilia and Josef, and the maid Maria Baumgartner, who had just arrived that very morning. Hours earlier, villagers had whispered about strange footprints in the snow. Footprints leading to the farm, but none leading out. Andreas Gruber told a friend he'd heard footsteps in the attic, found a broken door lock, and a newspaper he didn't recognize. Yet he stayed. That night, while smoke still curled from the chimney, something, or someone, entered the barn. 3 days later, neighbors noticed the farm strangely quiet. The cows lowed in hunger. The mail sat unopened. When they finally entered the barn, what they found would become one of Germany's most terrifying unsolved crimes. Beneath piles of hay lay 4 bodies: Andreas, Cecilia Sr., Victoria, and little Cecilia. They had been lured there one by one, struck with a mattock, a farm pickaxe. Inside the house, in their beds, lay the maid Maria and the youngest child Josef, all dead. The killer had stayed for days. The animals had been fed, meals cooked, candles lit. Footprints showed movement between the barn and the kitchen long after the murders. Investigators combed the property. They found a broken door, a bloody weapon hidden in the hayloft, and evidence that the killer had watched the family for weeks. But who could it be? Suspect after suspect emerged. Former farmhands, relatives, jealous lovers, a vagrant soldier seen nearby. Every lead collapsed into contradictions. Some theories suggested Victoria's late husband was not dead at all, that he returned for revenge. Others believed Andreas himself was the target of a family curse. In the autopsy report, little Cecilia's hands were covered in her own hair, as if she had torn at it in terror before dying. The weapon was never officially found, or perhaps never acknowledged. And when night fell over the farmhouse again, the villagers swore they could see a light flicker in the attic window. Today, the farmhouse is gone. It was demolished in 1923, its timbers burned and buried. Yet the ground of Hinterkaifeck is not quiet. Locals say on cold March nights you can still hear the animals lowing and the faint sound of a child crying from the barn. The files remain open. Over 100 people questioned. No convictions, no closure. In the archives of Bavarian police, the photographs are still kept under lock and key, faces frozen in grainy black and white, trapped between truth and nightmare. Some say the killer was a stranger who found the family by chance. Others believe it was someone they knew, someone they trusted, and perhaps that's why the door was never locked that night. 6 souls, 1 farm, no answers. A century later, the story still haunts the Bavarian woods. Listen closely. In the wind that moves through the trees, you might still hear the echo of footsteps on the snow, leading in, but never out.
March 8th, 2014. Kuala Lumpur International Airport, 12:42 a.m. local time. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, a Boeing 777, begins its journey to Beijing. Inside are 239 people, families, tourists, scientists, pilots, and children half asleep against the windows. The flight crew checks instruments. Everything looks normal. Weather, clear. Fuel, enough for 7 hours. Confidence, routine. As the jet rolls down the runway and lifts into the dark, the world is as it should be. 40 minutes later, the captain's voice comes over radio.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
It was a simple sign-off to air traffic control, and the last words ever heard from MH370. Seconds later, its radar blip disappeared. No distress call, no signal, no trace. A modern airliner, one of the safest ever built, had simply vanished into the night sky. As minutes turned to hours, controllers tried to make contact. No response. By dawn, panic spread through operations centers across Asia. Military radar later revealed something impossible. The plane had turned around. It crossed Malaysia again, flew west over the Andaman Sea, and vanished beyond the reach of civilian tracking. For days, search planes combed the Gulf of Thailand. Nothing. Then the Indian Ocean. Nothing. Onshore, families waited in hotel lobbies, staring at arrival boards that still read delayed. Some kept calling phones that rang endlessly before disconnecting. What happened after that turn? The answers divided the world. Theory 1. A catastrophic mechanical failure, fire or decompression, that disabled communication systems and left the plane flying on autopilot until fuel ran out. Theory 2. A hijacking or pilot suicide. Investigators found that Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah had a home flight simulator with a similar route saved months earlier, but motive was never proven. Theory 3. A series of technical errors combined with human confusion in the dead of night. Weeks later, satellite data from Inmarsat revealed a final handshake, a series of electronic pings that placed the jet in the southern Indian Ocean, far from any land. The world's most expensive search followed. Australian vessels, Chinese ships, robotic submarines scanning the ocean floor 3 miles deep. After years of effort, they found only a few fragments. A wing flaperon on Réunion Island, a piece of interior paneling in Mozambique, proof that MH370 had crashed, but not proof of why. Imagine it. A jetliner cruising quietly under a moonlit sky, 200 souls asleep, unaware they're slipping beyond reach, into the loneliest place on Earth. For those left behind, the questions never end. Did the crew fight to the last moment? Did the passengers wake up to chaos, or to nothing at all? Oceanographers say currents may have scattered the wreckage across millions of square kilometers. Even if found, it may never explain the silence that night. But to many, MH370 is more than a mystery. It's a mirror of our own limits, a reminder that in an age of satellites and surveillance, The earth can still swallow a machine the size of a building without a trace. In Malaysia, families still gather every March 8th, lighting candles, holding portraits, hoping for closure that never comes. Each year, new expeditions promise answers. Each year, the ocean answers with silence. Somewhere beneath those waves, perhaps 12,000 feet down, lies a story we may never read. The pings have stopped. The radar is clear, but the world still listens for flight MH370, and the sky remains quiet.
Sydney, Australia, January 11th, 1965. A summer afternoon. The sun burns across the sand, children laugh, seagulls cry, and the Pacific waves roll endlessly onto the shore. For 16-year-old Marianne Schmidt and 15-year-old Christine Sharrock, it was supposed to be a perfect holiday. A day of sunshine, freedom, and teenage friendship. The girls lived in the southern suburbs, inseparable since childhood. That morning, they told their families they were heading to Wanda Beach, a popular spot for swimming and picnics. They carried towels, sandwiches, and a transistor radio. Two ordinary girls in an ordinary summer. But by nightfall, both would be dead. Their brutal murders would shake Australia to its core. And nearly 60 years later, the name Wanda Beach still echoes like a warning whispered by the sea. When the girls didn't return that evening, their families assumed they'd missed the last train home. The next day, a local boy discovered something in the dunes, two figures half covered by sand. Investigators arrived quickly. Marianne and Christine had been dragged from the beach into the dunes, assaulted and murdered with extraordinary violence. Marianne's throat was cut so deeply it nearly severed her head. Christine had been stabbed 14 times. Their belongings, a blanket, a handbag, and their lunch leftovers, lay scattered in the sand, untouched by the tide. Footprints revealed a chilling story. 3 sets of prints, 2 barefoot, 1 belonging to a man wearing shoes. They led from the beach into the dunes, but only 2 came back. Police interviewed more than 7,000 people in the weeks that followed. Eyewitnesses reported seeing the girls with a tall, fair-haired man in his mid-20s. He carried a transistor radio, walked confidently, and laughed with them before they disappeared beyond the dunes. But despite composite sketches, newspaper appeals, and national panic, no suspect was ever charged. Forensic science was still in its infancy. DNA testing didn't exist. The smallest traces, hairs, fibers, sand samples, were collected, but decades too early for the technology that might have revealed the truth. In the years that followed, the case became an obsession for Australian detectives and journalists. Every new murder of a young woman in New South Wales seemed to circle back to Wanda Beach. Some believed the killer was a local surfer. Others blamed a serial predator, later known as the family murders suspect from Adelaide. None were ever proven. The one thing everyone agreed on: whoever did it knew that beach well. Decades have passed. The beach remains, beautiful, quiet, deceptively peaceful. But for Sydney, Wanda Beach is no longer just a place for families and sunbathers. It's a symbol of innocence lost. Every January, flowers appear near the old dunes. No ceremony, no memorial. just two names written in the sand: Marianne and Christine. In 2012, new DNA techniques re-examined evidence found on Christine's body. A small strand of hair preserved for nearly half a century. The result was incomplete. It pointed to no one. Once again, the ocean swallowed the answers. Yet for the families, the pain never faded. Marianne's surviving siblings still speak of her laughter, her curiosity, her plans for life that ended before they began. Christine's family moved away, unable to bear the memory of the shore that took her. No one knows who the man on the beach was, or why he chose them. Perhaps he walked away that night into the crowd, unnoticed. Perhaps he never left. And maybe, when the wind moves across the dunes just right, you can still hear two girls laughing, their voices carried by the sea, before fading into silence. The tide returns. The footprints vanish. But the ghosts of Wanda Beach never left.
July 2nd, 1937. The early morning air vibrates with the sound of engines. On a narrow runway in Lae, New Guinea, a gleaming silver aircraft prepares to take flight, the Lockheed Electra 10E. Inside sits Amelia Earhart, her leather jacket tight against the humid breeze, her eyes steady on the horizon. At just 39 years old, she was already a global icon, the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, a record breaker, a symbol of courage, in an age when women were told to stay grounded. But today's flight would be her most ambitious and her most dangerous. Her goal? To become the first woman to circumnavigate the globe along the equator, a 29,000-mile journey through storms, isolation, and uncertainty. As her navigator Fred Noonan reviews their maps, Amelia gives a confident smile to the photographers waiting nearby. She had done this countless times before. Take off into the unknown. One more flight, she said earlier that morning, and the world will be ours. At 10 a.m., the Lockheed Electra lifted gracefully off the runway and disappeared into the clouds. It was a perfect takeoff, and the last time anyone would ever see Amelia Earhart alive.
Echo Station, this is November. I repeat, the shipment is compromised at Checkpoint 4, requesting immediate backup.
Over.
For nearly 7 hours, Amelia's plane maintained radio contact with the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca, stationed near Howland Island, a tiny speck in the Pacific, barely 2 kilometers long. The plan was simple: reach Howland, refuel, and continue east toward Hawaii. But the ocean is vast, and Howland Island is unforgivingly small. A pinpoint of land surrounded by thousands of miles of empty sea. We must be on you, but cannot see you. Fuel is running low. We are on line 157 to 337. These were Amelia's final transmissions. Her voice steady, professional, even as the situation grew desperate. At 8:45 a.m., her last words echoed through static. After that, silence. When she failed to arrive, panic spread. Newspapers called it the mystery of the Pacific. The United States Navy launched one of the largest search operations in history. 66 aircraft, 9 ships, and over 4 million square kilometers of ocean scanned. But there was nothing. No wreckage, no oil slick, no trace, It was as if the Pacific itself had swallowed her whole. Over the years, theories have multiplied. Theory 1, the simplest, that Earhart's plane ran out of fuel, crashed into the ocean, and now rests on the seabed, nearly 18,000 feet below the surface. Theory 2, the Niku-Maroro hypothesis, that Earhart and Noonan landed on a remote coral atoll, hundreds of miles off course, surviving as castaways. In 1940, a British officer discovered partial human remains there, along with women's shoes, a sextant box, and fragments of aircraft metal. Later analysis suggested the bones matched a woman of Amelia's build, but the evidence was lost during wartime chaos, leaving the question unresolved. Theory 3, the Japanese capture theory. Some researchers believe Earhart was forced to land in the Marshall Islands, captured by Japanese forces, and accused of espionage. Local witnesses later claimed they saw a woman pilot imprisoned, but no official records were ever found. Dozens of photographs, sonar scans, and expeditions have tried to uncover the truth, from deep-sea searches by Robert Ballard to modern satellite imagery, yet the mystery refuses to give up its secrets. Imagine the silence that followed her final transmission, a vast ocean stretching endlessly in every direction, a lone aircraft somewhere between the clouds and the deep. Historians have calculated she had perhaps 30 minutes of fuel left. Was she circling, desperately scanning the horizon for Howland Island? Did she see the waves rising to meet her? We will never know. But one thing is certain. Amelia Earhart was not simply lost. She transcended the limits of her time, becoming an eternal symbol of bravery and defiance. For every woman who dares to dream, for every explorer who pushes beyond the edge of safety, she remains there, on the horizon. To this day, sonar teams still sweep the seabed. Every shadow, every metallic echo beneath the Pacific stirs new hope. Perhaps one day, a diver's light will catch the glint of her Electra, the final piece of a puzzle that has haunted generations. Until then, Amelia Earhart's voice lingers in the static. We are on the line, 157 to 337. We will repeat this message. Her words fade into eternity, carried by the same winds that once lifted her toward the sky. She sought the edge of the world, and found the edge of legend. Amelia Earhart, the woman who flew into history, and became its greatest mystery.
Every mystery hides a lesson, and every story leads to another. Subscribe now and join the journey.